Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for coming by. I love this photograph, leaving the best till last. Neumayer station, I suspect that's Oscar Niemeyer, or is it Neumayer, I'm not sure, is experiencing the most vivid aurora australis displays of the winter. Antarctica latitude 70 degrees 38 degrees south. Isn't it extraordinary? And that took me to Kerouac, quote, "We had finally found the magic land at the end of the road, and we never dreamed the extent of the magic." Macro thoughts, oil prices, which have surged to a more than 4-year high, and US longer-term bond yields have moved together in the past few years, notable as oil prices rise to the highest in 4 years. Interesting correlation. Well, I suppose high interest rates signal a stronger economy. 2018 per capita GDP by country, Charlie Bilello, lots of interesting detail in that. The Ripple token fell as much as 17% to 44 cents on Tuesday. Where are we now? Back to 53. And actually my trade in the crypto market was to be long Ripple and short Bitcoin, and until recently that was a terrible trade, but that's now turned out to be quite a good one. Home thoughts, I'm reading some short stories by Karen Blixen, based in Scandinavia, celebrating youth, newlyweds, for some reason. It's just extraordinary. The vistas are so wide. Hurts you in the solar plexus. She is, of course, a fantastic writer. Came to Kenya, famously said, "I had a farm in Africa, foot of the Gong Hills. The equator runs across these highlands 100 miles to the north, and the farm lay at an altitude of over 6,000 feet. In the daytime you felt that you had got high up, near to the sun, but the early mornings and evenings were limpid and restful, and the nights were cold." This is a photograph, Calvary Gong Hills, photo by Bgraphy 05, and I'll also post a photo I took from the Al Jazeera News Bureau a few weeks ago. Therese Jen, who I follow on Twitter and is so positive all the time, tweeted this: "It's time to dive in again." I've got 3 daughters. Resonated with me. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Nelson Mandela. Bill Cosby is taken straight to prison in handcuffs in this video to start a sentence of 3 to 10 years for sexual assault. The Cosby Show was a show that went round the world. I remember watching it often. I really enjoyed it. Just extraordinary. And then to hear his spokesperson liken Cosby's sentencing for rape to the persecution of Jesus Christ. They persecuted Jesus, and look what happened. Extraordinary. Political reflections. President Trump arrives at the UN. He missed his spot in the speaker's lineup, but subsequently went after that. This photograph was from Mark Noller. UN members laughed at Trump after he said he'd achieved the most accomplishments in US history. He began his UN speech by saying his administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. "There is some laughter in the hall." So true, he says. Laughter gets louder. Didn't expect that reaction, he says. People actually laughed at a president. At the UN speech, Trump suffers the fate he has always feared. This is the Washington Post. Overall, I think people have been a little bit unfair. It's particularly because the UN is a forum where he's not popular. His politics don't resonate. But yet I thought he toned it down this time a little bit. But nevertheless, I remember writing when I was sitting my exam for Westminster School one of the questions I sought to answer was might is right, discuss. I was 13 years old then, and kind of reminded me of that. Late day meeting, always a pleasure to see you, Emmanuel Macron, and talk about our shared priorities for Canada and France. That's Justin Trudeau, birds of a feather. Despite requests, I have no plans to meet Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, maybe someday in the future. I'm sure he's an absolutely lovely man, said Trump. Rouhani was keen to disavow the world of the notion that he'd requested such a meeting. Remarks by Mogherini following a ministerial meeting of the E3, EU+2 and Iran, talking about this special purpose vehicle. EU member states will set up a legal entity to facilitate legitimate financial transactions with Iran, and this will allow European companies to continue to trade with Iran in accordance with European Union law, and could be open to other partners in the world, she said. I commented, let's see where this goes. When push comes to shove, Europe tends to come to heel. And Pompeo's comments subsequent to this confirm that they're going to bring Europe to heel, in my perspective. South Korea was the first of Iran's major oil customers to reduce imports to zero under American pressure. So, it's already working. Trump's aggressive foreign economic policy is the signature success of his administration. It's highly effective. He can keep it up. It's working a treat. Theresa May says no deal is better than current EU offer. This could end very badly, it seems to me. The latest tariff round represents something much more dangerous and lasting, a true reset of economic and political relations between the US and China. This is the Financial Times' Luke Groman. It would be easy to see the latest $200 billion round of US tariffs against China set to go into effect on Monday as just another provocative shot fired off by an American president in need of overseas distractions at a time when the legal noose seems to be tightening around his neck. But that would be wrong. In fact, far from being an ill-advised and hasty policy decision emanating solely from Donald Trump's White House, this latest tariff round represents something much more dangerous and lasting, a true reset of economic and political relations between the US and China, the beginning of something that looks more like a Cold War than a trade war. The president is indeed single-mindedly obsessed with the US-China trade deficit, but he's also the sort of person who will cut a deal for personal gain, and it is hard to imagine that the Chinese could not come up with something that would make him flip to a more moderate position. Not so the economic hawks within the administration, like Mr. Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, and Robert Lighthizer, the US trade representative, who are playing an entirely different game. They believe it is in the long-term national interest for the US to decouple economically from China, reference what Pepe was saying yesterday. You hear a lot of them talk about China as a revisionist power like the Soviet Union, a purveyor of a completely different system, says Arthur Kroeber. Business faces more existential challenges. What does it mean for a company like, for example, Google to launch a censored search engine in China while its parent company, Alphabet, refuses to send its chief executive, Larry Page, to testify in the Senate on Russian meddling in US tech platforms? Can corporate leaders be above politics? They used to like to think so. Today it seems like wishful thinking. I tend to agree with that analysis. I wrote about this in July, in the first week, when I said tariff wars, who blinks first. And I think his aggressive foreign economic policy is working a treat. And I think Xi Jinping looks definitely, they've chipped away at that Xi Jinping facade of imperturbable progress. All treaties which General Charles de Gaulle famously compared to young girls and roses, they last as long as they last. The Syrian civil war long ago ceased to be a struggle fought out by local participants. Syria has become an arena where foreign states confront each other, fight proxy wars, and put their strength and influence to the test. The most important international outcome of war so far is that it has enabled Russia to establish itself as a great power. Moscow helped Assad secure his rule after the popular uprising in 2011 and later ensured his ultimate victory by direct military intervention in 2015. A senior diplomat from an Arab country recalls that early on in the Syrian war, he asked a US general with a command in the region what was the difference between the crises in Syria and the one that had just ended with the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. The general responded with a single word: Russia. The return of Russia as a great power was always inevitable, but was accelerated by successful opportunism and crass errors by rival states. Assad in Syria was always stronger than he looked. Even at the nadir of his fortunes in July 2011, the British embassy in Damascus estimated that he had the backing of 30 to 40% of the population, according to the Battle of Syria. Expert opinion failed to dent the conviction amongst international statesmen that Assad was bound to go. When the French ambassador Eric Chevalier expressed similar doubts about the imminence of regime change, he received a stern rebuke from officials in Paris who told him, "Your information does not interest us. Bashar al-Assad must fall and will fall." Talking about the accord with Turkey, Turkey will increase its military stake in northern Syria, but it can only do so safely under license from Moscow. The priority for Turkey is to prevent the creation of a Kurdish statelet under US protection in Syria, and for this it needs Russian cooperation. It was the withdrawal of the Russian air umbrella protecting the Kurdish enclave of Afrin earlier this year that enabled the Turkish army to invade and take it over. He's won. It's a question of whether the proxies want to give up or go on and on and on. The world population is growing by about 83 million per year. In 1988, a peak year, grew by 93 million. Wolfgang Fengler. Wow, body language of Ashley Kavanaugh. This is from Naomi Wolf. Yale classmates say Brett Kavanaugh is untruthful about drinking. Say he was a sloppy drunk, once wore a superhero cape, grabbed his crotch and sang, "I'm a geek, I'm a geek, I'm a power tool," says one. You can't lie your way into the Supreme Court. A tool in the old days was a tosser. International markets, let's take a look at that. Euro dollar 117.72, dollar index 94.18, slipping to that 94 level. 112.80, Japanese yen, Swiss franc 0.9646, the pound 131.71, the Aussie 0.7260, India rupee just below a record low 72.725, South Korean won 11.1774, the Rial 407.65, Egyptian pound 17.92, and the rand unchanged really 14.3767. Dollar index, this is a 3-month chart. I'm in two minds after speaking with Charlie last week. We're at 94.18, but the key point to note is US interest rates continue to climb. The yield gap keeps widening. The yield premium of 2-year US Treasuries over German bonds has risen to 335 basis points. That's from Olga. Euro dollar, therefore, I think because of that dynamic, you have to fade any rallies. Commodity markets' current gold chart does lend to possible constructive interpretation, needs to remain above 1187. That's Peter Brandt. Charts are constantly morphing, offering new evidence. This is why I advocate Bayesian probability, not fixed one-and-done probability. Current gold chart does lend to possible constructive interpretation, needs to remain above 1187. But I'm seeing a strong rebound across the commodity complex developing. Something is finally different in the silver market. Look at this. You can see the rebound, and of course leading the charge, Brent crude. This is a chart from Lisa Abramovitz. I think it's still going higher. And interestingly, Trump spoke about the need to lower oil prices, these horrible prices, he said, and crude rose to a session high right after that. Last trading $72.24 in New York. Argentina's 10-year bond yield spikes as central bank chief resigned. And Argentina's central bank president, who lifted short-term rates to 40%, quit, and 10-year bond yields surged as well. Let's look at sub-Saharan Africa, a deeper look into how the Ebola virus attacks. Don't mean to alarm you, but as I said previously, it's all about its escape velocity, because viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics, and what we're seeing is definitely it's right at the border now, and this is a very dangerous moment. Abiy Ahmed is our miracle, Ethiopia's democratic awakening in The Guardian. There's an inclination in the Ethiopian population to have more faith in charismatic leaders than in political parties or institutions. Abiy has been able to cultivate that cleverly. Well, look, everyone wanted hope, and he's come with some, and he's moved at great speed, which I think was one of the defining characteristics of what he had to do. In Addis Ababa, the face of Abiy Ahmed is almost ubiquitous, emblazoned on stickers, posters, t-shirts and books. Some of his most enthusiastic supporters liken him to a prophet. Without Abiy, we would be doing nothing. If we had time, he could change everything. However, old problems still remain. Amnesty is condemning mass arbitrary arrests in Ethiopia. It's a pressure cooker. Amnesty International condemned the recent arrests of thousands of people in Ethiopia's capital, saying the detentions threaten a new era of human rights gains under Abiy Ahmed. Rights Group was responding to a statement from Ethiopian authorities that police had conducted a wave of arrests in the wake of recent violence that killed dozens in the capital and its Burayu suburb. So we've still got a highly volatile mix there. Shock new polls shows that Julius Malema is eating Cyril Ramaphosa's lunch. EFF is polling 13%, ANC at 52%, and the DA at 23%. That's a big move by Julius. South Africa's business cycle is in its longest slump since 1945. South African all shares down 4.41% so far this year. Dollar versus Rand, as I said, 14.3767. Look, I still think it's going lower, but it has this ability to rally and catch all the shorts, squeeze them all out, and then boom, moves like 5 to 10%. Pleasing investors is getting expensive for Egypt. This is about the high short-term interest rate structure. The Egyptian pound is at 17.92 and has indeed been a safe haven in a turbulent world. Nigerian all shares down 13.41% year to date. Ghana is targeting $10 billion of a century bond sale by the end of the year. I put in brackets, yeah, right. Ghana's finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, said the country is preparing to sell $5 to $10 billion in century bonds by the end of the year, at a time when rising US rates are making investors wary of emerging market debt. In what will be the world's biggest sovereign issuance of 100-year securities, and the first by an African country, should the deal proceed, Ghana is planning to raise the debt as the first tranche of a $50 billion bond. The $50 billion will be raised in bits through a shelf offering, which allows issuers to register security without selling the entire issue at once. Only China, Argentina, and Mexico previously issued 100-year dollar debt, of which Mexico's $2.7 billion deal in October 2010 was the biggest. It's difficult to believe there is $10 billion of demand out there. This would be outside what you'd expect for their financing needs. There's no chance anyone's giving them $10 billion. Zero. And the fact that he keeps saying it makes me even more worried about what he's popping. Yields on Ghana's 2049 dollar bonds rose 3 basis points to 8.63%, most in a week. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 9.35% this year. Kevin Daly spoke about Ghana in this interview, and this is take a listen because he's covered all the Eurobond and local currency markets. As I said at the beginning of the year, I like what I'm seeing in Angola, Kevin reiterated that in the short clip. He says we've seen oil prices improve, fiscal deficits improve, non-oil deficits improve dramatically. And on top of that, they allowed the currency to adjust. This is the front page of the Daily Nation today. Hunted Obado stares at $2 billion fraud charges. And now that I looked at that this morning, I thought things are really taking a macabre and surreal turn. Kenya held the key rate at a 3-year low as inflation is seen steady. Kenya's central bank held its benchmark rate at a 3-year low. Inflation is expected to remain in its target range. MPC, which was fully constituted with 9 members for the first time in 5 years, kept the rate at 9%. Overall, as inflation is expected to rise in the near term following the implementation of VAT on petroleum products in September 2018 and its impact on other prices as well as increases in international oil prices. However, it is expected to remain within the target range due to lower food prices reflecting favorable weather. Central Bank unexpectedly cut the rate in July, citing below potential growth, while the MPC has said there is room for a more accommodative stance. Annual inflation rate fell to 4% in August after rising in each of the 3 preceding months. In retrospect, this is what I said, one of the reasons the central bank cut rates recently a little against the grain was exactly because they could see the inflationary bump coming and the room for maneuver closing. Nairobi all shares down 12.94% so far this year. Interestingly, it fell into a bear market on Friday, bounced out of a bear market on Monday, couldn't sustain the bounce on Tuesday, so today will be a very interesting day to watch. Kenyan stocks are the world's worst performers as interest cap bites. This is a report on Bloomberg. Country's main equity index has fallen 14% this quarter, the most among 95 global indices tracked by Bloomberg. Stocks in East Africa's biggest economy are in a bear market after sinking 24% from a record high in April. They now trade at the biggest discount to frontier market equities in almost a year. Based on earnings estimates for the next 12 months, the forward PE has fallen to 9.4 from 13.7 since early April. It's been a bloodbath. We will have a dead fourth quarter in terms of credit expansion, and that's not a great sign for the economy, said exotics. KPMG warned higher taxes on mobile transfers introduced this year will also hinder attempts to boost financial inclusion. My piece over the weekend was Bears roam the Nairobi Securities Exchange and the number of zombies grows. And on that I quoted President Kagame from 2014 when he said the markets are never wrong. NSE 20 down 22.6% year to date and firmly in a bear market. And the final link on rich wrap-ups is a list of any share listed at the Securities Exchange. You can dive into that from there.